Shabbat Shalom. So it's a great honor this evening to welcome guests into our community. This is something that's actually a long time coming. I first started a conversation with Sari Steinberg about 2 years or so ago through a network of nonprofits that, as fate would have it, it was started and sort of run by the grandfather of our bar mitzvah of next week, Joey's grandfather, Jim Stone, introduced us. So I don't know how all these things work, but this is sort of shared, yeah. So, and on top of it, what has happened in the world since we began our conversations about why it would be important to welcome members of ELNET, the European Leadership Network, here to speak. We couldn't have a more pressing reason than we presently do, given all that has occurred since October 7th of last year in Israel and all that's occurring around the world in various communities, Jewish communities and communities that are not Jewish, that are, God did not call, I know it. But we're waiting. We're waiting. Hineni. So it's my great honor this evening to welcome 3 representatives from ELNET, the European Leadership Network, and each one is distinguished in their own right. But I'm going to begin with the current executive director or president of ELNET USA, Ambassador David Siegel is here. Ambassador Siegel has quite the resume, but just little snippets of it. Was a member of was the chief of staff to the Israel Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Was the Consul General to the Southwest United States, and has been serving now since I think 2020. Yes, with ELNET, and with Ambassador David Siegel, we have a member of the European Parliament, Rihards Kols, is with us. And he's a Latvian politician who is currently serving in the European Parliament and has been very active in the work of ELNET throughout Europe. But we will hear more about that in a bit. And we also have Marta Kubica. Ken? Good? Oh, I got it. Marta Kubica, who is the CEO of ELNET in the Central and Eastern Europe, and has been with ELNET for 15 years, I think. Yes, about? For 5. I'm sorry, but you have extensive experience in Polish-Jewish relations and in Jewish studies. And I saw that you were you served as the chairwoman of the Jewish Students Association. Quite remarkable that we have 2 members of ELNET who are not Jewish, but have taken it upon themselves to advocate for Israel and Jewish causes in Europe, and I think we have great need. The other thing that we have great need for is to remember that we shouldn't get so caught up in what happens here exclusively. I mean, yes, politics are local. Yes, what's going on here is important. But as we know through history, what goes on in Europe, in Eurasia, in other parts of the world is critically important to us, to our family, B'nai Yisrael, the children of Israel, and to our motherland, Israel itself. So without further ado, I welcome Ambassador David Siegel to speak and to trade off, I think, and partner with Rihards Kols and Marta Kubica. Thank you. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to raise this for you, and then so if you so if it,
okay, thank you, Cantor. Shabbat Shalom. I first want to say thank you to Rabbi Geffen and Cantor. Your singing and these kids that you're training, it really has been an experience, I think, for all of us. And since our guest, if I'm not mistaken, Richard, this is your first time in a Jewish house of worship ever, let me just tell you that not everyone is like this one. So you should be very proud. It's very warm, very beautiful, and uplifting. And believe me, I've been to many of these. And this is very beautiful, and you guys are amazing. And Mazel Tov. Next week. So my name is David Siegel, and I'll spend 2-3 minutes, maybe a tiny bit more, giving you a little bit of a sense of what we do, why we do it. As you heard, I'm a former Israeli diplomat. I'm also a rabbi's son. I also belong to a Reform congregation in Israel. Long story, but we'll put that all aside. And what we do is make sure that Europe is in alliance with Israel. And Europe is part of the West. It's a major part of the West. And in fact, it's that part of the West that is closer to Israel than the United States is. The United States is way on the other side of the world. It has a long reach. But the Europeans are right there. I grew up in the city of Haifa in Israel. And you know that the island of Cyprus is 20 minutes away on light aircraft. So Europe is right there. We don't really realize that. Europe is also the largest market in the world that Israel has. It's the largest trading partner that Israel has, imports, exports, defense, civilian. It's an enormous relationship that most Americans are just not aware of. What you read about Europe, and many, many bad things also happen in Europe. We all know about Amsterdam last week. It's something that we're all concerned about. By the way, that was not done by Europeans. It was done by Middle Easterners that immigrated to Europe, and it's an issue in Europe about how to deal with that internal threat. So there's an irony of history there, right? But let me just say the following. As the Cantor said, this is day 407 of the war, and we're all wearing this to remind ourselves of the hostages, to remind ourselves of the dislocated Israelis, to remind ourselves of the families of the fallen and the reservists that are serving. It's taking a tremendous toll on Israel. It's the longest war in Israel's history. There's another war going on in Europe that Richard will discuss. It's almost 1,000 days of the war in Ukraine. We're in a different world. We're in a world that some say is like the 1930s. Why is it like the 1930s? There's an axis of countries that are very dangerous: Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, and more you see them integrating and working together operationally. The world is dangerous, it's unstable. It's also like the 1930s in the sense that there is no world order. It used to be a US, Western-led international order, and that order is really, for all intents and purposes, not functioning. So we are in between systems, and it's a very, very dangerous time. But we're also facing a war with different weapons, not just the drones and the rockets, but the hybrid warfare, the hate online that we feel in our campuses, high schools, and in the streets of Europe and in the streets of New York and other American cities. So it's all very, very different and very challenging. And not all of this can be done by Israel alone when it's fighting on 7 fronts against Iran and all its proxies, and it can't all be done by the United States. So who else is there? Well, the answer is there's Europe. Europe is an enormous friend to the state of Israel, and in fact, as the years go by with the Russian threat, with the internal Islamist threat in Europe, it's driving Europe more and more towards Israel, and you'll see it and hear it tonight, I hope, firsthand. It's quite an experience. And both Europe and Israel are working together to stabilize the Middle East, to find a way to end the war in Lebanon and to give Israel's north some sort of sense of security. The British will be there, the French will be there. When Iran attacked Israel twice this year, the French were there with the Israeli Air Force, the British were there. They took off from Cyprus air bases, which is why Hezbollah threatened Cyprus, which is a European country. The Europeans are very, very involved in what we do, and they're very, very involved in Israel's national security. And people don't know this enough here in the United States because, as the Cantor said, all politics are local and there's a bias of proximity. We care more about the people in our row that are close to us, our own family, than the people that are on the other side of the world. But the reality for Israel is that Israel needs partners and coalitions. So ELNET was created 15 years ago here in Chicago. And we have board members here, Susan Wagner from the Wagner family and other supporters that were mentioned before, and I'm sure there are more in the room that I haven't identified yet. So it's a local project, and it's an enormous project. It's a mighty project. We're 5% of AIPAC, and we're dealing in 36 countries in Europe without a pro-Israel movement there in many, many places. We've brought 35 delegations to Israel this year alone since October 7th, more than any other organization in the world, from 27 European countries with 350 members of parliament, all to the front lines, either the south or the north, and in some cases they go into Gaza with the IDF and into southern Lebanon with the IDF as well, to show them so that they understand what's at stake. So this is just a teaser and an opening, and we're going to invite you to join us in the Oneg. And now I want to introduce to you my partner, our partner on the ground in Central and Eastern Europe. Her name is Marta Kubica. We've all, I hope, pronounced it right tonight. Marta and I met 5 years ago on the phone. Marta was on vacation with her mom and I think a NASCAR? Formula One, something with cars. And we literally talked about her leaving the U.S. Embassy, leaving the U.S. diplomatic service after 10 years in the Israeli embassy in Warsaw to join us. And in 5 years, she has done magic. She has really taken our project from Poland to 8 countries in Central and Eastern Europe, engaging people at the top of government, at the top of parliament, bringing them to Israel on multiple delegations and finding ways to build a tremendous alliance. So, Marta, the floor is yours. And
Thank you, David. I would like to say thank you to this wonderful community for welcoming us. We really feel very welcome, and I'm sure that our guests also. Thank you so much for this beautiful musical Shabbat. As David said, as the Cantor said, I'm not Jewish, but I have dedicated my life to pro-Israel advocacy, and my love for Israel started from songs. I fell in love with the language, and then I found out it's Hebrew. It's spoken in Israel, the Jewish state. I was around 13 years old. Everyone thought it's, a phase. And no one thought that, including me, that 20-something years later, I will be really working professionally to advocate for Israel, on behalf of Israel, and with our Israeli friends in Europe, across European countries. This community, David mentioned that this project is local. This is where it started. But also, for me, being here is very emotional because my husband and his family come from here. They were Polish immigrants who were invited to Skokie, Highland Park, Highwood, by a Jewish family who was saved by my husband's grandfather, who's righteous among the nations. So it's very emotional for me to be here with you tonight. We'll be staying for the ONEC to actually answer your questions if you want to hear more about our work. I would like to just say that as a person on the ground, I have first-hand knowledge, and I serve as an interpreter between our region and Israel. We try to explain Israel to Central Eastern European countries, policymakers, leaders, journalists, people of opinions, people with influence, but we also try to explain our Central European point of view to our Israeli partners, who sometimes, again, are so closed in their own country with so many problems that sometimes they don't see that, first of all, they need friends in Europe, but they also have friends in Europe. So this is what we do. I will stay here after the service, and I would like to invite one of our friends in Europe, Latvian Member of European Parliament, Rihards Kols, whom we brought to Israel in 2022. We went on a delegation together, and this has been really very transformative experience for, I think, both of us. So, Rihards, the floor is yours.
Well, Shabbat Shalom. Indeed, as David mentioned, it is my first ever experience to be in a praying house, synagogue, an experience firsthand. And I'm deeply, deeply touched and humbled to be here with you and then share the beginning of Shabbat. Me, myself, yes, I'm not a Jew, but I'm very much touched what the Jewish people have gone throughout the centuries, and particularly right now in 21st century in particular. This said, I don't want to make a long speech. David already warned me. I have a few minutes left. Just a very brief background of who I am and where I'm from. So I'm from Latvia. In my previous capacity, I've served 10 years as a Member of Parliament for National Parliament in Latvia. And out of those 10 years, 6 years, I was chairing the Foreign Affairs Committee. And since this year, May, I've been elected to the European Parliament. That is like 100 times bigger animal than the National Parliament, and brings more challenge to bring the people together, and that we are aligned with a common goal. This said, of course, Europe has been thrown into a lot of challenges, particularly in the case of Russia's unprovoked aggression towards Ukraine. On top of that, we have war in the Middle East that is orchestrated by Iran's proxies, and lately, as we can see, Iran directly being involved and launching rockets against Israel. And this, for me, that is peace-loving being, that is committing to the promises that the Europeans made in the 20th century on the words never again, is really, really something. I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to defeat evil. There is a philosopher from Ireland, Edmund Burke, 18th century. And he once said, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for the good people to do nothing. And we are actually, I'm from Latvia, so that's the Baltic countries up in Eastern Europe. We are facing existential threat from Russia. Israel is facing existential threat from 7 fronts. And this makes us a natural allies, partners, where we have to engage, we have to support each other, no matter what. And this has been done through, of course, on a bilateral level, multilateral level, but I'm very pleased what ELNET is doing. They bringing in this, how would I say, action. Because yes, there are various organizations in Europe that are doing the same cause. I applaud them for their initiatives, but this is more of paper pushing rather than action. And by action, I mean really exposing European policymakers, what Israel is facing, what are the challenges, because believe me, not everyone in Europe really understands the complexity when it comes to the Middle East, and particularly the conflict that is ongoing for decades. Therefore, organizations that bring European politicians in Israel, it's really amplifying the effort and really bringing the change that is really necessary when it comes to supporting State of Israel and people of Israel in particular. It was mentioned about the pogrom in Amsterdam. Yes, it is a stain in Europeans' reputation, no doubt. Just this week there was a highly tense debate in European Parliament, particularly what happened in Netherlands. And believe me, those who are saying that that's normal, that they're pro-Palestinian, they should be heard, they're an absolute minority in the European Parliament. They're loud, but they're in minority. The silent majority stands with the State of Israel. It will stand because there's one simple thing. Israel is the only democracy in the region. And if any democracy is under attack, the duty of other democracies is to come to its aid. So this is something that we are living in very turmoil world. It's not isolated conflicts in Ukraine and Middle East. It's interconnected. It's Russia, it's Iran. It's not only ad hoc partnerships. Those are strategic partnerships where there's cooperation at the military level, political level, economic level. So our task is put our shoulders together and really not only address the issue, or wave the red flag, look, we have a problem, but what do you do with evil? You eradicate evil. You don't go and compromise with evil. You don't go and try to appease evil. You defeat evil. And this is something where I see, and I see it as deeply troubling in Europe, that certain patterns from the 20th century start to reappear. I'll be very open with you here tonight. I think the 21st century Chamberlain of European Union is Scholz, German Chancellor. And we see the patterns with Amsterdam, with that, what was mentioned. It's actually, everything started already with similar attacks, actually in Russia, in Makhachkala, when gangs of various backgrounds were storming the airport and looking for the plane that just landed from Tel Aviv and looking for the Jews. I think that was, and Russia, for example, on that particular case, did nothing. There was no law enforcement on place. It was just arrived hours later. And I think that was exactly the point that some crooked minds were got inspired in Europe. That actually the West is weak, we can do as we want, and will not be called accountable for. They're wrong, they will be. We are toughening our laws as well, accountability for those who are committing hate crimes. And it's not only on the ground and physical, but it's also in digital arena as well. Social platforms has become a battleground, especially for the younger generation as well. And we need to tackle those attacks that are trying to poison our young generation minds. So I'll stop here. I see I'm already stretched the time that was allowed me. But once again, I'm deeply honored and humbled for being invited here. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As you can hear, and as you have heard, these issues should provoke a fair amount of questions, and that we can bring to these distinguished guests that we are so blessed to have. Following the service, we will be convening in the south part of Crown to do just that, to have questions and answers. We'll have a couple microphones, and we'll be doing a question-answered session with Ambassador Siegel and Representative Kols and the CEO, Marta.